Everyone, can you hear me?
Hello.
Yes,
Hello.
hi.
Hi there. Is everyone staying healthy and safe?
So far.
All right, knock wood. All right, well, we have more than a quorum, so let's go ahead and get started. Rao, are you ready to give a technical update?
Yes, I am. Let me copy the, oops. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Let me copy the link to the report here. Okay, there's the link to the community update 117. Today I'll keep my comments relatively brief. We have Tomislav and NutZipper on the agenda to speak to the pieces they're working on. So let me just give an overview and turn it over to them. Let me share my screen. Okay, I think everybody should be seeing my screen. It's at 125%, that's good. All right, so basically we are, as of right now, the node versions remain the same. 0924 is the current release. And that's been the second release since the mainnet. We're close to getting ready for 0925. Now, all these 0924, 09, as well as coming up 0925 will mostly impact only the read-only nodes. That's certainly the case with 0924. Right now, we have the testnet running on 0924 on all nodes. Mainnet is running 0923 on the validator nodes, and we are updating the mainnet observer nodes to 0924. We have also, Gurinder has gone ahead and also set up an observer node intended for exclusive use by the exchanges. Because much of the functionality in 0924 is really to facilitate the exchanges and their requirements for API changes and for read-only functionality that they needed. As we were getting ready to deliver the mainnet, that was not a focus. So I guess to a degree, we're kind of catching up on that side of the functionality for somebody, whether it's a dApp developer or an exchange, to be able to use the observer node and get the information that they needed to get in an efficient manner. So that's the focus. 0925 I'll be talking to briefly. In terms of in case, I just want to address this in case there is confusion about, why do we have different networks and different parts of the network running at different versions. The idea is to not update or mess with mainnet validator nodes unless it's necessary to do so. But the observer nodes, we may update more frequently because it really doesn't impact anything else that's going on in general. But also, like I said, we're at a point now where we needed to put some functionality and focus on that. That's the reason why we're doing what we're doing. We're updating the observer nodes so that the mainnet is relatively stable and continues to do what it was doing. So that's where we are with that. And on the mainnet, we just want to make sure that when the exchanges come on board, that we have the ability to handle the volumes, and also that the exchanges can be responsive to their customers and having proper monitoring for their needs. So that's what we're doing. on 0925, really the main, well, 0925 will be coming out soon. But in general, beyond 0925, our main focus is on last finalized state. That would be the significant update to the mainnet nodes whenever we're done with the changes to that. And Tomislav is going to speak to that in a little bit more detail, as well as he can speak to how I talked last week about how we're trying to improve performance on the read-only nodes for an exchange or anybody to look at transaction history. So that task is accomplished now, and Tomislav will talk to how that's done. Will has completed that task, and Tomislav has built pieces of that to enable that. So that is something that Tomislav is going to talk to. NotZipper has completed the configuration changes. The PR is merged now. He will be presenting the highlights from the configuration change standpoint. The intent of that is to make it easier for somebody to bring up a node and keep it running. So a lot of stuff that we were doing manually is now all simplified. So that's what's going on there. And the next one on the last finalized state, again, that's the piece that Tomislav is primarily has been working on, and he has nicely broken it up and has created a development methodology whereby others can contribute parts. NotZipper and Will are beginning to engage with that and help him in accelerating delivery of the last finalized state. And now that they're done with the other pieces they're working on. So that's the status on that. Gurinder is working on essentially making sure that everything from an infrastructure standpoint that we have would work for the exchanges when they come on board, as well as looking at continual improvements in our monitoring and resilience of the network, as well as performance of the network. So those are the pieces he's been working on. On the documentation, we just kind of got started, I guess, last week or so with that. Initially, what we're doing is we're writing up for exchanges the necessary documentation, both in terms of, how do they get started, what are the best practices in terms of how they should configure and operate the nodes, as well as there is now documentation about how cost accounting works currently. So that's meant not only for exchanges, I guess it's broadly useful to everyone. So that's kind of where we are on documentation. And those pieces are being reviewed. So at some point we'll have them released. And I just want to give a shout out to Tomislav's education sessions on Tuesday, 10 Eastern in Jim's room, Jim White's conference room. Are there any questions on that? If not, I would like to turn it over to Tomislav to speak to the two pieces, how the reporting, basically how he's structuring the work on last finalized state and how we are using that structure to improve performance in the reporting API. But before I turn it over, are there any questions? All right, it's all yours, Tomislav. I'm going to stop sharing. You can share your screen if you want to.
Yeah, I would like to. So hello to everyone. So I would like to say a few words about last finalized state and in which phase we are now. So mostly I have a bunch of problems that I can talk about, but I would like to show you some things that are needed to complete this task. So we need last finalized state to be able to start from one point in the history and acquire state from this point and just continue. So currently the only way for our node to catch up is to acquire all the blocks from the Genesis block and replay everything and start from this point. And this is very slow process, because firstly we have some problems with replaying, which is not fast enough. And so now it's very difficult for Node to catch up, especially if you want to go from the beginning. So last finalized state should enable us that we don't need any previous history. So to do this, the first thing that I was working on is so we have two different databases or stores. One for where is RSpace with all the execution within all the data, and the other part is where are the blocks and all the history stuff. And so the first thing was to traverse through the whole history and copy this data or enable this data to be transferred via network. So this first part is completed, and now I'm working on the second part with blocks. And on this part, we have some difficulty, because we are using partially LNDB and partially file storage. And this file storage, now we need to extend it, and this is not easy. So now the thing that we are working on is moving file storage to LNDB, or more generally to any key value store. And this is what I would like to show you today, like a little demo of this one piece, and what this can give us for now and in the future. And also this is related to reporting stuff, because we need to do almost the same thing as catch up. We need to replay the blocks. So this process is slow, and we are now looking how to cache the data and not doing the replay all the time. So Will made great progress for that, and he created now in memory cache, and we will expand this to LNDB. So something that with this additional stuff with LNDB, we can, for example, have much more control. So
it sounds like you might want to increase the font size just a little bit.
So the code is not really important. I don't want to go too much into detail into the code. It's not important. That I want to be brief. I just want to show the files that we have in our node, right? We have RSpace folder, and in RSpace folder we have Casper with these three databases. This is what we have now, and it's very difficult to change this configuration. We need to change the code, and for example, for this block storage, we need additional databases, and so I'm building something that is much easier to use. So for example, just by creating different configuration, now I need to recompile, but this can be also part of configuration. And if I restart the node, we can run the node, everything in one database. So we have an easier way to manage the databases. So, and also one other thing is, with just another implementation, we can run different database. So for example, now I switched to in-memory key value store. So if I run node again, there is no database on the file system. So I'm running node directly in the in-memory database. And this is also something that we have some problems with memory, and we are not sure if this is part of the Java heap or Java used memory or LNDB. So this is also a way that I'm thinking in some ways that we can easily switch to another store if this is really necessary. So with these changes, this will be much easier. And of course, we will use this key value store in reporting stuff that now will complete it. And I think this is everything what I want to say for now. I think, yeah, how much work is still needed. One part of the work is migration from file system to LMDB, and completing all the other stuff. I think in 2 weeks we can complete this, but I'm not sure that we can say this will be completely finished because we need some testing. As Rao said, these changes are not like this other. These changes must be applied to all validators, and we need to be sure that everything is working correctly. Does anyone have any question?
Thank you. That was great. I really appreciate that presentation. Excellent.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's excellent, Tomislav. Thank you. So if there are no questions for Tomislav, why don't we move on to NotZipper to present the highlights of the configuration changes? NotZipper, did you want to share your screen or?
Yes, sure. Let me do that. Okay, can you see? Can you see my screen? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I want to highlight 3 things. First one is that one of the recent PRs changes the configuration structure. The second is there are some changes to Genesis ceremony, and the third is there are some changes to KuCoin routine. So first one, I rewritten the configuration part of our node, and this is how it's work right now after the change. So configuration is merged from 3 sources: defaults, configuration file that's provided via CLI option, and CLI options themselves. So if you are wonder what are the variable parameters in our node, and to better understand internals and how it's work, you can refer to defaults.conf in Rchain project folder. The big parts of configuration are moved into chunks, into folders. So server, client, sorry, peers discovery, API, server, storage, secure connection, and Casper. Casper is the biggest part. You can go through all these variables to check what do they mean, and Genesis block data. This part is used when node perform the Genesis ceremony and build Genesis block. And Genesis ceremony, as a subsection of a Casper config folder, is Genesis ceremony variables. So I encourage everyone to look at this new default config and to check what changes and maybe adjust their config files. I'm not writing any transition document because because we have if your config file will be old and contain parameters that are not in this new default config, Node won't stop and will throw an error. It will say to you that this is the key that I don't know. So you will have a understanding on what you should change to make your config up to date. And what's one more important thing, the metrics. For metric streaming, we use KMon library. This KMon configuration moved out of the default conf. So default is the solely rnode configuration, and command.conf is the which should be in rnode default folder. If you provide this command.conf, you can tune the metric streaming, but this is not what most of users will need, so I won't say much about it. So this is it. This second one is key generation. So when we had a bug when we couldn't use the environment variable when we were using key files, so people were forced to use keys in plain when they were using some kind of scripts automation. Now this fixed, and the procedure of key again is changed a bit. So this is how it works now. It's I followed convention over configuration style. So you always do. You do not provide any variables. You just type around key again, put a password for a file, and now we'll show you where the keys are. And one more thing is that we print now key in the hex format, so you can get this string and put it in a bonds file, or well, this is the type of a key that is used in lots of places, so it's a useful thing. And you can now run Node with this key. Let me show you run. Okay, and you can see that validator, so variable, environmental variable is not set, and it asks you to put a key. So we will set this variable. Now we run a node. That's it. So this is the second change, and the third change is the Genesis ceremony, as well as configuration changes help that a lot, and Genesis ceremony is reworked a bit. People who run the Genesis ceremony can have a bit of more control and understanding on what's happening. And I want to present this repo. It's in Rchain community, Rchain Docker shard. It's tool to start Rchain networks on a single machine with the Docker Compose. There is extensive description. It's continuation of Will's work. I made a little changes, so I want to show you how it's working. So all the data is inside the data folder. Let's clean it for now. And you have 3 YAML files, which are Docker Compose scripts. If you want, you can take a look at them in the GitHub repo, but the one that we will go through is the shard YAML. It will start a shard of 3 nodes. One node is a bootstrap node, and 2 Genesis validators. I just want to expand more on the Genesis ceremony because might be it's not understandable by most of the people how it works. So when several nodes decide to arrange a shard, one of the nodes play the role of Genesis validator. It starts the node in a standalone mode and just create a Genesis block. I believe let me talk while it will go through this in the console. So I will up the shard. Oh, this one. So this command will create 3 Docker containers, and here it is. So all nodes are starting, trying to open their ports to talk with the outside world. This is just a check of the data, and you can see that validator 1 and validator 2 are just waiting for first connection. They will bootstrap from this node, from bootstrap, but they are waiting for first connection because they're waiting for bootstrap to send them an approved block. So in this Genesis ceremony, there's a crucial part, Genesis validators. These are nodes that are that have to validate Genesis block, and Genesis validator should be started with the Genesis validator flag. It is required. So right now, what Bootstrap does, it is it says that he doesn't have a approved block. He will take part as a ceremony master, and he is preparing right now an approved Genesis block. It parsed bonds map, it parsed validate wallets file, that's it. And it starts executing approved block protocol, waits 2 approvals from validators. So it's up to ceremony master to decide how many approvals he wants. He needs to this block to be approved, and it starts send unapproving blocks to the peers. So on first send it peers with Genesis validators, and that's it. As we can see here, validators receive Genesis block, and here we can see this is already as well thing that changed. Previously, when Genesis validator get a Genesis block, it starts to verify it no matter what. And now we are checking for duplicates. So this is good because verifying Genesis block can be a hard task if it's huge bonds map, huge wallets file. So it's a big block. So you can tune how often ceremony master send an unapproved block. By default, it's, I guess, what is it? It's 15 seconds or 10 seconds. So, and you can see if you are ceremony master, you can see that you have failed to meet approval conditions. You didn't get any signatures, and you keep broadcasting the unapproved block. Here it is: first approval received, second approval received. That's it. Bootstrap sent all approvals, created an approved block, and broadcast that approved block to peers. Validator 1 received it, validator 2 received it, and now they are just adding this block to their DAG. So when they will compute this approved block, they all will transition to running state, and this means that they are connected to the live network. So that's it. If you wish, you can run this by yourself and look more carefully through logs. I was trying to make it easy to understand what's happening. So that's it. Thank you very much for your time.
Any questions for Notzipper? Awesome. Well, that was another excellent presentation. I really appreciate that. Slowly but surely, the code base is starting to get a little bit more orderly and a little bit more friendly. So it's this is big progress on both fronts. I really appreciate it.
Indeed.
Thank you, Notzipper.
Around, did you have anything else?
No, I think that's all we have for today. So we, unless people have questions on any part of the technical presentation, the floor is yours, Greg.
Awesome. Cheers. So, so I'm going to make sort of 2 points side by side. One is, of course, if you have tokens on KuCoin, get them off. There are still 28 million tokens on KuCoin. Get them off. And if you are wondering where you can put them, if you don't want to put them on a wallet that's under your control, you can, it turns out that today MXC has announced that Rchain is, the REV token is being listed on MXC. So you can move your tokens over to MXC. There'll be an AMA later today and one the next day as well. So feel free to check those out. Feel free to check out MXC. It's one of the top exchanges on CoinMarketCap. So this is good news, I think, for those people who hold the REV. Do know that US citizens will be blocked from trading on MXC, and this is because of the issues, the ambiguity around the regulatory environment here in the US. But for those who are not US citizens, you know, feel free to check out MXC and yeah, this is one way that we hope to be able to reach a wider audience and entice them into the actual use of the token, which is not about trading, but running smart contracts on the platform. So any questions about either of those?
Hi, I have a question about the amount of tokens KuCoin holds. Like, is it that, I think you said before it was like 4 million left. Now you're saying there is 24 million.
28 million. Yes, I was mistaken. So we were looking at the wrong data, but we now have tracked it down. So there's still 28 million left on a wallet that KuCoin controls. So please move your tokens as soon as possible.
Greg, on the new exchange, it appears they at least temporarily halted deposits. Was that a technical issue with their implementation of the wallet? Was that an Rchain related issue?
I don't know. I don't know. I wasn't aware that they'd halted them. So
Okay, it may be back up. It may have been short, but I know they definitely at some point halted after they opened that up.
okay. All right. Yeah. So just keep an eye on it, and of course we'll keep an eye on it as well.
Thank you.
Which exchange is this one?
MX.
The one Greg just mentioned.
Oh,
MX.
okay. I see. Also, I just want to add that I'm not sure if everybody is familiar with that abbreviation AMA is Ask Me Anything. And I think that's a Telegram session that's going to go on, right, Greg?
It goes back to Reddit, right?
Reddit, okay.
Yeah. So that's why I didn't bother to explain it, because it's been an internet terminological thing for over a decade. But yes, it is. Ask Me Anything. Okay. There are several business updates, but we will save those for the Q&A session on Friday. Unless there are any other questions or comments, I think we've had a good debrief for today. So any going once for any questions or comments while we're in session?
I have a comment. Arthur Grief developed a connection between Rchain and a Rust implementation of zero knowledge proofs, which I thought was really cool. Now that uses Thomas Love's HTTP interface, and is that going to be standard available in the regular node, or is that going to be special in order to use that?
You mean Tomislav's HTTP interface?
Correct.
Tomislav?
Yeah. This is just the prototype, and I used HTTP, the first library that I found out, and it's synchronous. So this definitely is not the solution. So yeah.
There we go. Thanks
All right.
for asking. Jim, I understand that you've done some performance testing, and as we knew, as long as we have the network throttled, it's relatively abysmal.
Yeah, well, I got worried because I guess it was Dan said it was 2 transactions a minute.
No.
And I was able to get, what was it, 24 transactions a minute? Let me look back.
45 is the last number you posted. For
Okay, 45 transactions a second if I put all the transactions in one deploy.
Yeah.
Now we're serializing at this point until they get the block merge problem solved of deploys.
Yeah.
So doing deploys, I was getting 2. What was it? 200 per 200 per hour, which is better than 2 a minute, but not much.
Not much. Yeah. No. No, we can, but we expect it to get, so there are 3 major places of improvement, right? So one is obviously the try merge, and the other is, of course, the mapping of the threading model all the way down to the hardware. So those are the 2 things we'll be focusing on right after we get the last finalized state sorted out, and that will unblock unthrottle the network. So we should see considerably better performance, and most importantly, the performance will improve as we scale the hardware. So the hardware we're running on is not the target hardware. So as of 2018, we spelled out exactly the kind of hardware we needed in order to get the transaction speeds, and that's going to require a significant ramp up on the part of the co-op. But we're not there yet, and don't need to be spending the money on the hardware because we don't have the transaction throughput demand right now. But we will be scaling up as the transaction throughput demand comes on. So I really appreciate you digging into that, and I'm looking forward to seeing those numbers get much, much better. All right. Unless there's anything else, thank you all, and everyone stay safe, stay healthy, and looking forward to seeing some of you on Friday.